Hello friends, how are you going today? It's Mark Hummer of course here again, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some Nikon camera equipment, some things that I've previously owned and some new releases that are very exciting. So thank you very much Nikon. It's like Christmas all over again. We're getting presents after presents and very happy to receive these options anyway. So today there's specific points I'd like to talk about my own equipment, and that is when I transitioned from the Z9, and mind you I'm filming on the Z9 right now using a 50mm prime. It's a 1.8 prime, but I'm shooting at 2.8, and that'll be because I'll be transitioning from that camera and then onto the ZFC and filming the second half of the video with that, because I'll be talking about these two cameras and I need to demonstrate them. So just sort of let you have a heads up there where we're going with it. So you'll see in full operation one of the big subjects of the day. And the big subject of today is very exciting, is this little 28mm f2.8. And it's the SE version, so it's that retro sort of styling. Now I've owned this before, I've recently purchased it back again, and it wasn't far off I got the ZFC again. So I've had the camera, I thought I could do better with the Z6II, didn't really fulfill my expectations, was quite happy with the ZFC as far as its compactness and lightweight ability, the fact that it's quite economical, it's not expensive, and when you couple it with this lovely little lens, which is the same sort of retro styling, which is very attractive, and you put the two together, you got a wonderful looking and very practical arrangement. So this is great for taking photos, it's fantastic for video. In fact, a lot of my videos very recently in the last year or two have all been taken with the ZFC here, and with either this lens or another 24 to 35mm prime. So usually I like to do these videos at around 50mm because I find that composes it very well and gives all the lines that I have a graphic background, of course, so I want the lines as straight as possible and tidy. I don't want any distortion. So if I was to shoot this at say 24mm, it could very well be that the lines start going out of plumb and that just looks a bit awkward. So it's much easier to remove the issue of distortion, shoot at 50mm and everything's going to look fantastic. And so that's what I've been doing. So if I want to shoot at around 50mm with this camera, I'll be using a 35mm prime, and that's a great option. So I have these various Viltrox primes here. I've got a 24, 35, and this one here is actually cool. This is the 16mm f1.8, and that's great if I want a very wide angle. And of course if I put that lens on this camera, it ends up 24mm, so that's a very versatile focal length as well. So one of the beauties of buying these prime lenses, and particularly buying always a full frame lens, is that you get like two lenses for one. Because on a full frame camera like the Z9, if I put this on, it's 28mm. If I put this 28mm lens on the ZFC, because it's a crop sensor, I now get around 42mm. So I've got various options, like you have one lens with you, you've got two options for these sort of cameras. So I find that very interesting, and I pretty much only buy full frame lenses now, whether I have a crop sensor camera or not. So getting on to the subject of this camera package here, I just wanted to say that I'm very impressed with it. I've taken it out on a video session just recently at one of the botanic gardens close by in Brisbane, Mount Kuthra, and it took some nice landscape photos, and I wanted to see, was 28mm on a crop sensor camera, which is the equivalently 42mm on full frame, is that doable to take landscape photos? Could this be the ideal little travel camera lens camera combination that you could take anywhere with you on a festival, on holidays, traveling overseas? It's small, it's compact, it doesn't cost a lot of money. If it were to get lost or broken, it wouldn't be the end of the universe for you. As I lost that Z9, there's $9,000 gone. This one here is like $1,000, so it's far more affordable to take with you and risk getting it stolen or lost or damaged. So as a travel kit, how does it hold up? Now I know for video it's quite excellent, even though it's a very modest camera in price and features, it does what it needs to do very well, which is 4K at around 30 frames per second. So that's quite great. It doesn't have image stabilization, which I do miss from time to time, but if you can bring a tripod with you or you just got steady hands, it can work very well. So in the context of this, I'll show you some slides and it'll run through, it won't be very long or boring, but I'll just show you some photos that I've taken recently at that park. And you'll start off with some landscape photos to give you an idea of just how wide you can go with this 42mm format. And then what I'll do is I'll then show you some close-up photos. So there'll be some flowers, some ornaments and objects, and various little close-up smaller creatures, even little lizards and so on, and turtles. And you'll see just 42mm can still be very useful in taking photos of smaller subjects. Just got to have the skill to get in close and get that focus right. And then it works out very well. So I'll show you those samples again. I'll stipulate we see the landscapes first, and then we'll see some objects, and then we'll see the close-ups, 100% zooms of those objects to show you just how sharp and useful this camera package is, and how it's not to be underestimated. So it might look just like a pretty little toy, and it might be quite inexpensive. Doesn't mean it's rubbish and doesn't work. It's actually a very capable camera and lens combination, and I highly recommend this 28mm 2.8 SE lens with crop sensor camera of this styling. It just looks really good. It works very well also on the ZF as well, because retro styling. But I will add, this lens looks a bit odd when you put it on the Z9. It's basically so small that it looks like a pimple on a rhinoceros's bottom. It's just way too small for that camera as far as looks go and appearance. So it does function very well, but to me it just looks a little odd. But anyway, there you go. Let me run you through those slides very quickly, and then we can get back on to the other news of the day. Okay, so I hope you really enjoyed those photos. I think they really sing the praises of the camera, that it works extremely well, and it's a very versatile combination. Now, one of the big things, excuse me while I turn my back occasionally, I've got a tiny little camera bag. Now, this is magnificent for me because it's very lightweight. If I'm going on a bit of a hike or a festival, or I know I'll be walking for the entire day and want to take some photos, it's lovely to be able to put this tiny little camera in this tiny little bag, and it fits in there generously. I mean, there is room to spare in there. That's not a tight fit by any stretch of the imagination. And you've got plenty of room. You can still fit, like I can still get my mobile phone in there with no problem at all. You could put some keys in the little pouches, and there's a zip in the front there to put a little, maybe a spare battery. These tiny little batteries will easily fit in here, and that's just fantastic to have a compact and very lightweight system with you all day, so you're not stressing and sweating up and also having the thing dangling around and being a nuisance. So it's very light on the body and very compact, and that's what I love about this camera. My favorite thing about this camera is its small, compact form factor, and the fact that, you know, I was walking around that park, funny enough, I was talking about that, and as I was walking around the park, I'm often holding it in my hand, and I forget to put it back in the camera bag, because it's so light, you don't even realize you got the thing in your hand. It seems to weigh little more than a mobile phone, really, and if you're used to holding things all day. So yeah, it's so wonderfully compact and convenient. I can't help but just sing the praises of this little camera and lens package. It's very sharp, very efficient. Autofocus is fantastic. And I find that the fact that it's also got the flippy out screen is very, very convenient for doing either, you know, vlogging or doing your videos or YouTube at home, whatever. It's great to be able to see what you're doing when you're taking video, and great for those photo angles when it's very, very awkward angles. So, you know, if you have to go really high up and you want to see what's going on, you know, you can flip it in any position imaginable and you can always see what you're doing. So the flippy screen's great as a backup option. So I just wanted to run through the praises of that camera. So I was just talking about how excited I am about this little crop sensor camera, and you know, very recently we've just had a new release, and that was the Z5II Mark II. Now that's very similar in that it's a crop sensor camera and it's lightweight and easy to carry around, so that's also excellent. And it has all those updated features like the brand new processor. It's got the X-Speed 7 processor in it and many upgraded features and photography and video options. So it's actually become a really pro level little crop sensor camera, and I'm very happy that Nikon have that in their lineup for people as an entry startup point. So apart from that little camera that's just been released very shortly, we also have one that's been immediately released only a few days ago, and that's similar in name. It's actually the Z5, not Z50. So we've got the Z5 Mark II. And that's actually pretty amazing. And the reason that's really amazing is it has many of the features that things like a Z6 would only have in the past. So you've got now the new processor in that Z5, which upgrades it immensely in all its options and abilities. And of course, you've also got the fact that it's got all those extra features for video and photos and great autofocus, for example. So it's really a semi-professional little unit. I'm very impressed with it now, and I think that's a great option for many to get into the full frame genre and better utilize all those bigger lenses. So there's not much you can't do with this. 24 megapixels, it's a fantastic quality image. So I've used the Z6s for several years. I had the original Z6 and the Z6 Mark II, and they were both fantastic for photos and video. In fact, the quality was so good you could barely tell it apart from the Z7 or the Z9. You'd have to like pixel peep 200% to even notice that there was a resolution difference. I mean, let's face it, 24 megapixels is the equivalent of 6K. And 6K is way better than most TVs and monitors are able to resolution images for you. So, you know, that's way above the standard you need. And of course, even at 4K, 12 megapixels, that's what most of these TVs and monitors are projecting. So you really don't need any more than 12 megapixels. 24 is double what you need, isn't it? So that's very excessive, really. And you're never going to show an image, whether you print it, whether you put it on display on, you know, your Facebook or your Instagram. No one's ever going to see it greater than 4K anyway. And those who have 8K TVs, well, that's great for them, but that is certainly the minority at the moment. So maybe in the future that'll be significant, but that's a long way off being the standard. So be very happy with your 24 megapixels. It's a beautiful image, gives in a lot of light and brightness, and you'll be very happy with the results. So I sing the praises of Nikon there for providing and upgrading all their camera gear so it all fits in the same genre of quality. So it doesn't matter if you get a Z9 and you spend $9,000 Australian, or you spend $1,000 plus maybe $1,500 or so on a Z50 Mark II, you're still getting very high quality results, great processing and great image quality. So you really can't lose no matter what you're buying these days. It's always going to be an excellent product that'll serve you very well. In relation to this Z5 that's just come out, many people will say, oh, maybe it's going to kill the Z6, you know, compete with that because it's so close in its features and options. And yes, it is, but it is two different animals completely. So yes, it has the new processor, which makes it magnificent, and the Z5 has also the 24 megapixel sensor, which is very useful. It isn't the partially stack sensor, but then, you know what, I don't think that's really a big deal. Either you've got a completely stacked sensor or you don't. So, I don't know, partially take it or leave it if that's really significant for you. Gives you a little bit more speed, I suppose. So that's nice, but I don't really care about that too much. If I need that sort of thing, I got the Z9, which is fully optioned and has everything I could want. But as a secondary camera, would I consider a Z5 instead of a Z6? Well, there's some things to consider there. So yes, the Z5 will serve you very well and give you excellent video and photo quality. But the two things that I find in it that maybe swaying me more to the Z6 III as a second camera would be the fact that it doesn't have CF Express cards. It has 2 SD cards, and that's nothing bad. SD cards work fine. This little camera here that I was just raving how much I love it, and I think it's a great little camera, that only has an SD card, and it only has one. But because I buy high quality SD cards anyway, if I can buy V90 ones at the top of the range, and maybe I'll buy the Sony Tough cards, they're very reliable and robust, and they perform extremely well. So I'm not worried so much about that for that level of camera. But if I'm talking about the Z6 equivalent, the thing is I like about the Z6 is it does the 50, 60 frames per second full frame. It's not cropping in. And that's the one factor I think the Z5 would be a little bit disappointing for me, because when I do video, I almost do all my video at 50 frames per second. You might say, why not 60? Well, because I'm in Australia, we have a PAL format. PAL format is 25 frames per second and 50, so 50 and 25 is our standard. It just suits our viewing regulations. So whether it be 50 or 60, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is I'm shooting at an ability to slow it down and have slow motion at any scene I want. So when I process the video, I can process it at 25 frames a second, so it looks quite normal, and the motion blur is quite natural. And then if I want to use the full benefit of the 50 frames per second, slow it down and incorporate that into the video, I can then have slow motion in any scene that I've taken. And that just takes the pressure off. Oh, did I set it back this way? Did I put it onto 50? Did I put it down to 25? You know, am I cropping in? Am I cropping out? I don't have to worry about that stuff, because the Z9, for example, will shoot full frame at up to 120 frames a second. So when I'm shooting my video, I like it to be full frame all the time, and I like to be able to shoot the same frame rate at full frame all the time. So for me, this is where not the Z5 is going to carry it for me, but the Z6 would be more useful and versatile, especially with video. I mean, they both have inbuilt stabilization, which is fantastic. I think that's something that often is underestimated the value of, particularly when you're running down at very slow shutter speeds for photos. And also if I'm doing some sort of stabilization. So whether it's like a handheld rig or it's in a gimbal sort of an arrangement, to have an in-body stabilization in the camera is a very big and helpful, useful tool. Z5 has that, so that's a bonus. But it's really that 60 frames per second and the lack of a CF Express card. And why is a CF Express card such a big deal? Mainly because of you get a lot of volume in a CF Express card. The one I have in the Z9's are 2 terabytes. So they're massive. I can film and run it, you know, for almost all day. With 2 of those in the camera, that's 4 terabytes. It's a huge amount of information if I want it. So I don't ever have to worry and think about, is there enough file space for it? There's always enough file space for anything I want to do. So not having that option is a bit disappointing. You know, SD cards can be a little bit less reliable. So, you know, again, that's something you just got to consider. Of course, you've got 2 in that camera, the Z5, so you do have at least backup. But one thing that nothing of backup will fix is the fact that it retards down your speed of ability of making images. So how many frames per second is slowed down. How much video format and quality of video you can do is reduced, simply because of the card's abilities, physical structure. So the CF Express cards, for example, because they can go at such very high rates, you know, 1700 or whatever it is, megabytes a second, you can do your 8K, you can do your 4K at 120 frames per second in full frame. All that data and information isn't bottlenecked into the card and retarding the camera's performance. That's why I think the Z6 has the greater advantage, because it does have one of those cards in there that you can utilize for that high performance. This is also why the ZF is not something I'm considering. Not because it's a bad camera, it's a beautiful looking camera, and it certainly has many similarities to this ZFC here, but just a full frame equivalent. So that's fantastic, I love it. But you know what it has? It has SD cards. It doesn't have CF Express. And of course, I think really, you know, my opinion of that camera, I reckon if they make a Mark II version of that in the future, maybe 2 years down the track, and they make a ZF Mark II, I reckon they'll put a CF Express card in it, and they'll forget this micro card and an SD and just make the damn thing a little bit bigger. It's just like they did with the Z6. You know, the Z6 Mark III that's come out recently, that is slightly bigger and heavier than the old Z6. There's no reason they couldn't make those couple of millimeters extra size and incorporate in one big CF Express card. I think that's a much better option for any modern day camera. Whether it has retro styling or whatever, one CF Express card, I think, would be much better than two SD cards, both for the performance of the camera and its capabilities, and also for the fact that you get a lot more information, a lot more faster speeds in it, and upgradability is there, and more options. So I think that's probably where they'll go. Probably the only real change they'll make in it is that they'll put maybe a CF Express card in. At least that's what I'll be hoping. Then that retro style camera would be very exciting for me. So who knows what the ZF Mark II will come out like, but I'll be looking forward to seeing that progress. Whether they do that in any other cameras in the line, I don't know. It's horses for courses with budget. When you're only spending a little over $1,000 for a camera, you don't expect to get all the best features and options available, because that would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? It'd be unreasonable. I mean, let's face it, if you're only going to spend $1,000, they can't give you $9,000 Z9 quality and everything, because then why would you buy a Z9? They'd be obsolete then, wouldn't it? So obviously there's a staggering system, isn't there? So you've got your entry-level crop sensor cameras, which are very capable now, especially with the XP7 processor. So you can start off on those, and they're a budget entry. And then you've got your budget entry full-frame cameras. So you've got your Z5 and your Z6. Now, Z6 very capable camera. I'm not saying it's entry-level and it's rubbish, but that's the two that are in the lower price bracket of full-frame. And then if you really want to increase up, you've got then the Z8 and Z9, which are leaps and bounds in options and ability and build quality above the others. So the ZF is sort of in between the Z5 and the Z6 Mark III, sort of in between the three of those. But it's so close to the Z5, it's almost a sister camera, just a modern version of it. The Z6 is, I think, quite a leap beyond the ZF and the Z5. So there's definitely brackets in these cameras and where they're at. Now, I own the Z9, so I have all the features. I don't really care about features of cameras that much, because obviously I can do everything on the Z9. But I will say this, there are times when I regret having the Z9 that I wish I actually had the Z8. And that's simply its sheer size and bulk. It gets actually quite heavy, it's quite tedious to use, quite tedious to pack. Every time you get a camera bag, you've got to think, is the bag big enough? Because it's such a bulky camera, and then you've got usually a bigger lens with it, like a zoom. You've got to fit a big zoom and the big Z9 in with your gear. It actually becomes an enormous system. And there's no use putting them in a backpack, because then they're never accessible. They're always behind you. They're not actually with you. So you need something in like a saddlebag. And then that saddlebag has to be quite large and heavy and big and cumbersome. So it gets actually a little bit frustrating having the Z9 sometimes. So it has its application. Like, for example, if I'm on a tripod, as I am now, and I'm filming in my room, does it matter how big and bulky it is? No. If I'm in a studio setup doing portrait photography for someone or doing a video, does it matter how big and heavy? No. Because I can rest it down, I can put it on a tripod, use a monopod, whatever I like. Where it becomes annoying is when you're traveling around. So I do a lot of bird photography, and that Z9 is incredibly heavy. When I have my big zoom, and I'm talking about the 150 to 600 mil, that's a very heavy lens, and you whack that on with a heavy camera, it's quite a burdensome rig. So I use a cotton carrier rig to carry it around, because I just couldn't hold it all day. It's too weighty. So this Z9 can be a bit of a nuisance. It's got all the features imaginable. It does everything, and that's why I got it, because I wanted one camera that would do everything, and that's all I had to take if necessary. If one camera was what I had to bring with me, this one camera could do the lot. So that was very exciting. But the weight and bulk does get a bit frustrating. So I certainly empathise with people wanting things like a Z6 or a Z5 for the fact that it's compact and carryable and easy to pack away. So the Z8's a great option. Maybe the Z8 with the battery grip would be a great option for many, where you can remove the battery grip when you don't want it, and you've got a lighter, more practical camera. But the Z9, of course, is the flagship, and I got it because I wanted something extremely robust, tough, weather sealed. So when I go out doing my landscape photography or birding photography and the weather turns ugly, I don't have to worry about the camera getting moisture in it or damage. And the other thing I love about the Z9, the Z8 has the same, of course, and that is it has that shutter protection, that little screen to cover over your sensor. So yeah, it doesn't have a mechanical shutter, but what it does have is a mechanical screen to protect the sensor. And that's brilliant. That's really invaluable. When you're changing lenses out in the field, it's a windy, blowy day, maybe some rain and dust, and you just don't even have to think about the sensor getting dirty. I remember with my other cameras, the Z6 and Z7, when I was out and about, I was always taking photos and going, what is that in the image? And there would be a hair across the sensor or something. And I'd have to blow it out and try and wipe it and clean the little spots. And that was very frustrating. I've had the Z9 for 2 years now. I've never cleaned the sensor. Just never needed to, because it's always protected and safe and clean and dry. So that features of these pro-level cameras are incredible if you can afford to buy them and if you're happy to carry around the extra weight. But beautifully, Nikon have looked after us and they've given us some lighter cameras that are full frame still, feature packed with great processors, but are light and actually practical to carry around, and that can be a big thing for people. So everybody's covered. Thank you, Nikon. You've looked after us really well. 2 thumbs up for all these options that we've got now at the moment. And of course, that doesn't go about the lens lineup, which is fantastic and really blossoming out. So it doesn't matter if you're buying a very inexpensive Nikon lens like this one here, the little 28 kit lens, if you want to call it that. That's a brilliant lens. That's a great value. Or you go and spend a fortune on a 70 to 200. Horses for courses, whatever you need. So what I'll just show you now is I'm going to swap cameras now, and I'm going to go over to the ZFC and we'll film with that with a little 28mm. And then what I'll do is I'll bring the camera in a little bit because now we're going to 42mm. So the whole rigged tripod needs to come in to compensate for that. So I'll muck around with that. You won't have to put up with all that delay. I'll cut the scene and we'll come back and we'll have a look at how everything looks in comparison from the Z9 with a 50 prime to now the ZFC with the little 2.8 28mm. Okay, thank you. So guys, we're just starting off now, and I'm filming again now with the ZFC this time, and I've got the 28mm 2.8 on, and we're filming in pretty much all the same specs. I've got the same lighting, same microphone. I've got the lens set at, it's a 28mm lens at 2.8. I've got it at 2.8 right now, and so it should look very similar to the Z9 as far as the overall image quality goes. Of course, I was using a higher format on the Z9, but when I get it in post and tidy it up together, should be made to make it very similar anyway. But certainly the look and the framing, it should be very similar. And you know, 28mm, it's like 42mm on a crop sensor camera. Here I was using 50, so I've just had to bring it in about 18 inches to fill the frame up about the same equivalency. And that's very practical. In fact, coming in a little closer is better because now I'm using the flip out monitor, which is a lot smaller than my 7-inch monitor I use on top of the Z9. And so it's now more visible and seeable. Yeah, I can see the little autofocus box over my face, and I know it's capturing my eye and doing a great job. So that's fantastic. And I can tell it's recording with the red box going around the frame. So I'm loving the ZFC as far as being a very convenient studio video rig when you're doing these sort of talking head videos. But we're talking here about the Z9 now, and I was just illustrating that this is what I was using. So I was using the Z9, had a big monitor on top, but you don't need to see that right now, it doesn't help. And here I was using the 50mm Viltrox lens, it's a 1.8 prime, but I was shooting at a 2.8, so there'd be an equivalency in the overall look and light and darkness. So that's what I was using to film you all just then. You'll see it. I'm just going to put this away, make this a bit safe. Make sure the lens has got its covers on. And then what I'm going to do, put on it, is I'm going to put on this little FTZ adapter. Now you might say, why would you put an FTZ adapter on your Z9? Well, I don't need it for any lens right now, but what I'm going to do is just show you what the little 28mm 2.8 lens would look like on the Z9. So you've seen it on the ZF, but now this is what it would look like in size comparatively on the Z9. And it's almost identical in size. I measured it up and then had them side by side, and they're almost identical. So that gives you a great idea of the volume of it. It looks tiny. I think I gave the illustration before of a pimple on a rhino's bottom. It is a bit too small for this camera as far as its looks go. Now obviously the performance of that little 28mm on this camera would be fantastic, Great wide angle lens. It would be fantastic for travel, for doing a wide angle, if you're doing sceneries, landscapes, all sorts of things you could get away with. But what I want to show you is something that I was talking about just at the end of that video, where I was talking about how awkward this thing is to bring around and why sometimes I wish I had the Z8 because it's just so big and annoying. So if I'm to have my zoom lens on this, could you imagine how much bigger this is to try and get that into a camera bag? It's like ridiculous. And even with a modest prime on, it still projects out quite a way and becomes quite a big object to put in a camera bag. Now with a lens like this, a little tiny lens like this on the Z9 particularly, I can actually use now a very modest camera bag. A camera bag that I could never have used before if I was using any of my normal primes or a zoom. Now how can I illustrate? Well look, this bag is not a big bag. It's a modest camera bag. It's just the next step up from that little one I used for the ZFC. And this modest little bag now, because I have the little equivalent 28mm lens on, I put that in there and I got plenty of room to spare. So not only can I fit my Z9 in this modest little camera bag with a lens attached, be it say the 28mm or it could be the 40mm f2, but that little lens fits in a modest little camera bag, and I can still put glasses, my phone, spare whatever I need in there, and have room to spare. And it's only a tiny little camera bag. This is a very modest unit, and now it doesn't weigh too much. You know what the problem I was having before with the Z9, and I'll just put this out of sight because we don't need the bag anymore, but just to show you, if I take this off and I illustrate, and I go put, say, my little camera on zoom in, could you imagine trying to put this into a camera bag? How are you going to go? Now you can put it into a big backpack. You've got a backpack you put on your back for hiking. Yeah, it'll fit in there, no problem at all. And a few other lenses and accessories. But if you're just trying to carry this around all day, let's say you're doing a festival or a wedding or something, you don't want to have everything on a backpack because then you can't move it around. So what are you going to do? I mean, you can hold it, but it weighs a ton. Put it on a neck strap and it's pulling on your neck. So you could use the cotton carrier system if you wish to, or you can have a modest camera bag as I just showed you there, and don't have a big heavy zoom. Just have those tiny little primes, and it makes it very portable and also brings the weight down. You see, this weighs about 1 kilo, this lens alone, and the camera is very heavy. So if you don't want 2 kilos around in your backpack, ripping at your shoulder. So those little tiny lenses, equivalently this size, are fantastic on something like a Z9 when you're going to be carrying it around all day. So, for an hour in a studio or an hour doing a portrait work outside, this is quite tolerable. But if you're on a full day trip, you're going overseas on holidays, or you're going to be shooting all day at a festival, those light little lenses make something the size of a Z9 so much more tolerable and enduring. So I just wanted to illustrate that to you because I think that's really important. Because it's all very well to buy these really expensive top-end equipment. You go, oh yeah, look at me, aren't I great? I got all this expensive gear. But when you find you can't even be bothered carrying it around all day or it's breaking your neck, it's not fun anymore. Now remember I was talking to you about why I love the Z8 and the Z9 so much? Because they have that protective cover. As you can see here, you can't touch the lens. The sensor, sorry. You can't damage it in any way. It doesn't get dust or dirt because every time you turn it on or off, see there it is turned off, but as soon as I turn everything on again, it closes up and seals and protects the sensor. So that's a really great help and an aid. It's not a shutter, it's a protective barrier. So with these smaller lenses, I have these various prime lenses from Viltrox. The beauty of these ones, not only are they inexpensive, which is really cool, but the thing I also like about them is they're a little bit smaller and lighter than the Nikon equivalents. That doesn't make them better, probably the exact opposite, but it does make them nice and light. So when you're taking photos around and about, it just detracts from the heavy weight of the Z9 and makes things a little bit more tolerable to hold all day. So, right now, what have I got on the 24mm there? And you'll find that no matter which one I choose, 24, 35, or the 50, and I'll just reverse that so that they're all equivalent. You see they're pretty much all the same weight and size. So they all weigh just as light or just as heavy if you want to call it that. And it's about 450 grams. And that makes very tolerant your ability to carry a camera around all day. And if you want to take multiple lenses, they're not heavy. Collectively, these three weigh the same as this one. So what you can do is you can take one if you want to, but it's big in the camera bag. If you take a few little lenses, it's a bit more modest and you can choose smaller camera bags and it's just more comfortable to bring around. I wanted to mention, which I find very funny about the Z9, and I'll just illustrate this very quickly. and this is of course is exactly the same with the Z8, is when you are out and about and you're taking photos. I can take photos now. All right, I just put it in photo mode. Here we go. Can you hear that? That's my taking photos. See how quiet that is? From here you don't notice it. This is electronic noise. This is artificial noise. The actual camera taking a photo makes no noise because there is no shutter to make a noise. So I have to program in a level of sound and a particular tone that I want to hear, so I acknowledge I'm actually taking a photo. The other beauty of this is they do help you, because if you have, I don't know if you can pick that up in the camera, but what it's doing is it gives a flash every time you take a photo around a barrier, just to let you know that you're taking a photo. Because if you turn that sound off and you turn the tone right down, you can't hear anything. It's completely silent. And it's also because there is no shutter, there's no vibration. You don't feel like taking a photo. You know what I find funny? That's a great feature. I love that. Particular things like a wedding, when someone's giving a speech and you don't want to go click, 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 click over their speech the whole time. That is so irritating. I've been at weddings as a videographer when the photographer's standing right beside me with their camera or whatever is Canon, Sony, whatever, and it's going click, 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 clunk, 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 because they've given an old DSLR. That is so irritating over the video and over the speeches. They're so used to it they don't even notice it, but it is very annoying for the videographer. So these things that are running silently, if you wish them to, fantastic. And to be able to turn the volume up or down depending on your situation, that's great. I mean, let's face it, when you're taking bird photography and you're getting in really close to the bird, you might be able to creep in about a metre, 2 metres up close to them to get a nice shallow depth of field and a bright image. And then you hear ka-clunk, ka-clunk. It's going to scare the bird away. So it's nice to be able to turn that volume off, and that's a luxury of those top-end cameras. So this is why I say sometimes these entry-level cameras are brilliant, but wow, you know, once you've handled a Z8 or a Z9, it is a completely different world, and I can see why they charge twice as much for them. So, you know, some of the features most people would never use and they don't care, but features like that potentially completely silent photography is a magnificent feature. And you know, sometimes I'm out there shooting with my ZFC, and if I'm using the Z9 90% of the time, which I do, and I'll go grab the ZFC and I go take a photo, I actually get a fright. Yeah, it actually startles me because I hear ka-clunk, and it feels like someone's just pushed you in the back. Now, obviously they haven't. It's ridiculous. I'm exaggerating. But the point is the difference between how smooth, silent the Z8 and Z9 are and how crazily noisy and shaky a shuttered camera is unbelievable. You don't even realize the difference until you have them in your hands and you're swapping one from another. So yes, very often I'll pick up the camera and I think, oh, I've broken it or something. No, it's just the shutter activating. It's so loud when you're not used to it, and you're used to it being completely silent. So that's just a funny little quirky detail, but I thought I'd share it with you all the same. So other than the fact that I'm very impressed with Nikon's lineup, how they're filling it out, and there's no rubbish cameras anymore. This is really the point I'm trying to make. Almost everything's got now. There's an X-Speed 7 processor. You've got top-of-the-range lenses to choose from. You've got budget lenses like the little lens I was talking about, the 28mm 2.8, which is an excellent quality lens, and yet you still get these beautiful images from a couple of $100. So it's a couple of $100 lens, but magnificent functionality and use. Or you can spend as much as you want to spend. You can spend, you know, $24,000 on a 600mm TC if you want to get the best quality imaginable. But it's horses for courses. It's all about what you do, what you need. If you're only taking video and photos of your kids playing football or, you know, the dog playing tricks, then obviously you don't need to spend $9,000 on a camera to achieve that. So I understand completely that Nikon have set us up a lineup of options that tailor for everyone, and I'm very pleased to be a part of a company that's looked after us so well. So thank you very much for hearing and listening me out. Remember, I get no sponsorship, no kickbacks from Nikon. I just like Nikon because, look, 10 years ago, I had to choose a brand to stick with and start accumulating a collection of gear. And so I chose Nikon, really not even knowing much better. And I endured and put through the years where we were transitioning from the DSLR days, you know, D810s and your D850s over to, you know, the Z6, Z7s and so on, and off it went. And yeah, there was some, you know, years there was like pulling teeth to get a decent Nikon camera lens combination. But I've been patient and waited it out. I didn't just give up, throw it away and go get Sony or Canon or some other brand. I stuck it out and they've looked after us. So sometimes patience pays off. I think it did, and I'm very pleased that I've stuck with them. So thank you very much for hearing me out, listening to me. Hope you have a wonderful life, and enjoy your weekend options when you get them. Have a great day. Bye-bye.